Red emergency lights painted everything in shades of blood. Lyra pressed her webbed hands against the cold metal wall of the dying ship, feeling each shudder as another system failed. 3 months ago, she lived in the crystal cities beneath her homeworld's warm oceans. Now she drifted through the void with 4,000 other survivors, running from monsters that had boiled their seas and burned their world. The gentle current had been a cargo hauler once. Now it barely held together. Lyra made her way through narrow corridors packed with refugees. Families huddled in corners. Children cried for homes that no longer existed. The air recyclers wheezed and struggled. They had maybe 2 days of breathable atmosphere left, maybe less. She reached the communications room where old Tovan worked the ancient equipment. His scales had dulled from stress and malnutrition. He looked up as she entered, and she saw the answer in his eyes before he spoke. The Helkari Union sent their response, Tovan said quietly. They offer their sympathies and wish us well in finding sanctuary. Lyra closed her eyes. That made 12. 12 civilizations they had begged for help. 12 times they heard the same answer wrapped in different words. Everyone was sorry. No one would act. The Kashari Dominion was too powerful, too brutal, too dangerous to oppose. There is one more possibility, Tovan said. He pulled up a star chart. Human space. It borders the outer edge of this sector. Humans? Lyra searched her memory. I know almost nothing about them. No one does. They are young, only been in space for 80 years or so. They have maybe 20 colonies, a small fleet. Nothing impressive by galactic standards. Tovan's clawed finger traced a route on the display. But they are our last option. Lyra stared at the glowing line that represented hope or just another rejection. Her people were dying. Children were going hungry. The ship was falling apart. She had no choice left. Set course, she said. The jump through hyperspace took 4 days. 4 days of rationing water and air. 4 days of watching the life support systems decay. 4 days of doubt eating at her resolve. What would these humans do that 12 older, wiser civilizations would not? Why would they care about strangers? When they dropped back into normal space, alarms screamed immediately. Hull breach in Section 7. Life support at critical levels. The gentle current tumbled through the black, and Lyra wondered if they had come all this way just to die in sight of their last hope. Then sensors picked up a ship. Military design, angular and efficient. It moved toward them with purpose. Lyra held her breath. Would they attack, turn away? She activated the emergency beacon and broadcast their plea in every language the translator could manage. The human ship, steadfast according to its identification signal, slowed as it approached. A voice crackled over the communication system, deep and measured. Unidentified vessel, this is Captain David Reed of the United Earth Navy. We are reading critical failures across your ship. Do you require assistance? Lyra nearly sobbed with relief. They had not fired. They had not fled. They were asking if they could help. She activated the translator and spoke, her voice shaking. Yes, please, we are refugees. Our ship is dying. We have children aboard. There was a pause. Then Captain Reed spoke again, and something in his tone had shifted. We are moving to dock. Prepare to transfer your people to our vessel. You are safe now. The next hours passed in a blur. Human crew members moved through the gentle current with swift efficiency. They wore environment suits and carried medical equipment. They were gentle with the children, quick with the injured, and professional throughout. Lyra watched them work and felt something she had not felt in months: hope. Captain Reed met her in the docking bay after the last refugee had been transferred. He was tall by her standards, with dark skin and observant eyes that took in everything. He looked at the Marani people crowding his ship, their injuries and exhaustion plain to see, and his jaw tightened. How many were you before? He asked. 300 million on our homeworld, Lyra said softly. 4,000 survived. She watched his face carefully. This was the moment she had lived through 12 times before. The moment when aliens heard the scale of the atrocity and decided it was too big, too complicated, too dangerous to address. She prepared herself for disappointment, but Captain Reed did not look away. He did not offer empty sympathy. Instead, he reached for his communication device. This is Reed to Admiral Wong. Priority alert. I need an emergency council session. We have a situation that requires immediate command attention. A woman's voice responded. Captain, we are in the middle of fleet exercises. Can this wait? Reed looked at Lyra and the refugees behind her. No, Admiral. It cannot. The human ship jumped to hyperspace, carrying them toward a station called Geneva. Lyra sat in the medical bay while human doctors treated her people. One of them, a young man with careful hands, bandaged the burns on a Marani child's arm. The child whimpered, and the doctor spoke softly to comfort her, even though she could not understand his words. Captain Reed found Lyra there an hour later. "We will reach Geneva Station in 8 hours. The council is convening. You will have a chance to tell your story." "And then?" Lyra asked. "Will we be the 13th to turn us away?" Reed was quiet for a long moment. He watched the doctor working with the injured child. His expression was hard to read, but when he spoke, his voice carried an edge she had not heard before. "I cannot speak for the council, but I can tell you this: humans have long memories. We remember what it feels like when no one helps. We remember what it costs." He met her eyes. "Tell them everything. Show them what happened. Let them see what you have seen. Then we will decide together." That night, Lyra could not sleep. She stood at an observation window, watching stars stream past. Somewhere out there, the Kashari Dominion continued its expansion. Somewhere out there, her homeworld lay in ruins. And somewhere ahead, in a council chamber she had never seen, her people's fate would be decided one final time. She pressed her hand to the cold glass and whispered a prayer to the old ocean gods. She did not ask for victory. She did not ask for revenge. She only asked for someone, anyone, to care enough to try. Behind her, human crew members moved through their duties. They spoke in quiet voices, but she heard them mention her people. She heard compassion in their words. She heard anger at what had been done. And for the first time in 3 months, Lyra allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, this 13th time would be different. Geneva Station appeared ahead, a massive construct of metal and light spinning slowly in the dark. The gentle current would go no further. But perhaps its passengers had finally found what they were searching for, not just sanctuary, but allies willing to stand with them against the darkness. Captain Reed stood beside her at the window. "We are here," he said simply. Lyra nodded. Whatever came next, at least she would face it knowing that someone had listened. That alone was more than she had dared to hope for when this desperate journey began. The ship docked, and humanity prepared to hear the testimony of a people who had lost everything. What they would do with that knowledge remained to be seen. But for Lyra, simply being heard was already a victory she had stopped believing possible. Silence filled the council chamber like a physical weight. Chancellor Robert Hayes watched the holographic display flicker and die, the final images of burning Marani cities fading into darkness. Around the circular table, representatives from Earth's government and colonies sat frozen, their faces reflecting the horror of what they had just witnessed. Lyra stood in the center of the chamber, her translator device clutched in trembling hands. She had shown them everything: the sudden arrival of Kashari warships, the deliberate heating of her world's oceans until the water boiled, the systematic slaughter of her people as they were forced to the surface. The children, always the children in the footage, their scales blistered and burned. Hayes cleared his throat, breaking the terrible quiet. He was 60 years old and had led Earth's unified government for a decade. He had navigated political storms, economic crises, and the delicate balance of keeping humanity's colonies working together. But nothing in his experience had prepared him for this. "Thank you for your testimony," he said to Lyra. His voice sounded hollow even to his own ears. "Please rest. We will deliberate and provide our answer." Lyra bowed slightly and left the chamber. As the door sealed behind her, the silence returned. Hayes looked around the table at the faces of those who would decide humanity's course. Admiral Patricia Wong, her military uniform crisp despite the late hour. General Nina Volkov leaning forward with her hands clasped. Governor Sarah Williams of Mars Colony, her expression troubled. A dozen others, each carrying the weight of billions of lives in their decisions. "Well," said Representative Morris from the Europa settlements, "we all saw the same thing. The question is what we do about it." Admiral Wong activated her datapad. "Our intelligence division has compiled everything we know about the Kashari Dominion. The summary is not encouraging." The holographic display came alive again, this time showing star systems marked in red. 47 of them. 47 conquered worlds. "The Kashari have been expanding for over a century," Wong continued. "They follow a consistent pattern: arrive, demand submission, destroy those who resist. They have eliminated 12 distinct civilizations. The Mirani are just the most recent. What about their military strength? Governor Williams asked. Superior to ours in almost every measurable way, Wong said bluntly. They have more ships, better weapons, and centuries of combat experience. They have never lost a major engagement. Representative Morris seized on that. Then this decision is simple. We offer the Mirani asylum. We condemn the Kashari actions publicly, but we do not start a war we cannot win. So we do nothing, said General Volkov. Her accent thickened with barely controlled anger. We watch the footage of those children burning and we do nothing. We do what we can, Morris countered. Which is provide refuge. We are not galactic police. We are one species trying to survive in a dangerous universe. We are more than that, Governor Williams said quietly. Or we should be. The debate began in earnest then. Arguments flew across the table. Some spoke of responsibility and moral duty. Others talked about survival and protecting humanity's own colonies. The practical consequences of war, the cost in lives and resources, the risk to Earth itself. Hayes listened to it all, his own thoughts churning. He pulled up a communication request from Luna Medical Station, where Dr. James Liu was treating the Mirani survivors. Patch him through, Hayes said. Dr. Liu's face appeared on a secondary screen. He looked exhausted, his gray hair disheveled. Chancellor, I wanted to provide my medical report. Go ahead, doctor. I have treated over 2,000 patients in the last 8 hours. Burns, malnutrition, radiation exposure, and trauma, both physical and psychological. Liu paused, his composure cracking slightly. I have worked in disaster zones. I have treated victims of terrorist attacks and natural catastrophes. This is different. The injuries I'm seeing were not incidental. They were calculated. The Kashari designed their weapons to cause maximum suffering. Doctor, Hayes began. I have a patient, Liu interrupted, and Hayes realized the man was close to breaking. She is 7 years old by our estimation. 3rd-degree burns over 40% of her body. She watched her entire family die. Do you know what she asked me? She asked if the humans were going to hurt her too, because in her experience, every species with power uses it to cause pain. The council chamber had gone quiet again. Everyone was listening. I cannot tell you what decision to make, Liu said, but I can tell you that I looked that child in the eyes and promised her she was safe now. I would appreciate it if you do not make me a liar. The transmission ended. Hayes looked around the table and saw his own struggle reflected in every face. Except Admiral Wong. Her expression was granite hard. I would like to say something, Wong said. Hayes nodded. Wong stood, her hands behind her back in a military stance. I am a naval officer. My job is to assess threats and neutralize them. I deal in tactics and strategy, not morality. So let me give you the tactical assessment. She pulled up a new set of data. The Kashari are expanding outward from their core territories. At their current rate, they will reach human space in approximately 15 years, maybe 20. When they arrive, they will give us the same choice they gave the Mirani: submit or die. We do not know that for certain, Morris objected. Yes, we do, Wong said flatly, because they have done it 47 times before. They do not negotiate. They do not coexist. They conquer. So the question before us is not whether we will eventually fight the Kashari. The question is whether we fight them now, when we have the element of surprise, or later, when they come for us and we stand alone. You are proposing a preemptive war, Governor Williams said slowly. I am proposing we help people who need help and simultaneously address a threat to our own survival. The Mirani have intelligence on Kashari tactics, technology, and weaknesses. They can provide us with everything we need to plan an effective campaign. And by liberating their homeworld, we send a message to the galaxy that humanity stands against this kind of brutality. A message written in blood, Morris said. Yes, Wong agreed, but whose blood was already decided when the Kashari chose to commit genocide. We are simply deciding whether we let them continue unchallenged, General Volkov spoke up. If we do this, we must commit fully. No half measures. We mobilize everything, hit them hard enough that they cannot respond, make them regret ever hearing the name humanity. Hayes held up his hand for silence. The debate could continue forever, but ultimately the decision rested here, in this room with these people. He looked at each of them in turn. We need to vote, he said. But first I want everyone to understand what we are voting for. This is not a police action. This is not a border dispute. If we choose war, many of us in this room will not live to see its end. Our children will grow up during wartime. Our colonies may be attacked. Earth itself could be threatened. We are risking everything. He paused, gathering his thoughts. But I keep thinking about that child Dr. Liu mentioned, the one who asked if we were going to hurt her. And I think about what it means if we say no to this. It means that when genocide happens, humanity looks away. It means that our principles only matter when they are convenient. It means that we are no different from the 12 civilizations that turned the Marani away. Hayes stood from his chair. I am calling a vote. All in favor of military intervention to liberate the Marani homeworld indicate now. Hands rose around the table. Wong immediately. Volkov without hesitation. Governor Williams after a moment of visible struggle. Others followed. When the count was complete, it was not unanimous. 5 representatives voted against, including Morris. But it was enough. The motion passes, Hayes said. His voice was steady, but his hands shook slightly. As of this moment, humanity stands with the Marani people. We go to war. Admiral Wong was already pulling up deployment schedules. We can have the fleet mobilized in 3 weeks. I recommend we— Admiral, Hayes interrupted. I want to be very clear about the rules of engagement. We are going to free the Marani homeworld. We are going to break the Kashari occupation, but we are not conquerors. When this is over, we leave. We do not take territory. We do not impose our rule. Understood? Understood, Chancellor. Hayes turned to the communication system. Have someone bring Lyra back in. While they waited, Hayes felt the weight of what he had just done settling onto his shoulders. He had committed humanity to war against an empire that had crushed everyone who opposed them. People would die. Children would lose parents. Families would be shattered. All because he said yes when he could have said no. Lyra entered the chamber, her aquatic eyes wide with uncertainty. Hayes faced her directly. We have voted. Humanity will help you. We will liberate your homeworld. We will fight the Kashari. Lyra stared at him. For a long moment she did not move. Then her legs gave out and she collapsed to her knees. She was crying, her body shaking with sobs of relief and grief and desperate hope. Thank you, she whispered through the translator. Thank you. General Volkov moved to help her stand. Do not thank us yet. We have a long road ahead. But Lyra was beyond hearing. She had carried the weight of her people's survival alone for so long. Now finally someone else was willing to share that burden. Hayes watched her and wondered if he had just saved a species. Metal screamed against metal in the shipyards above Mars. Sparks showered down like artificial stars as welders worked through their 3rd consecutive shift. Nobody complained. They had all seen the footage. They had all seen what the Kashari did to the Marani children. Ryan Park moved through the orbital factory floor, his tablet displaying weapon specifications that would have been theoretical 6 months ago. Now they were being manufactured at a pace that terrified and impressed him in equal measure. He was a weapons development officer, and he had spent his entire career designing systems that hopefully would never be used. That hope was gone now. How many more can we produce? Admiral Wong asked, appearing beside him without warning. She had that ability, moving through spaces like a ghost despite her rank. The kinetic penetrators? We will have 2,000 ready by next week, Ryan said. But Admiral, these are untested. We built them based on Marani intelligence about Kashari shield frequencies. If the data is wrong, then we adapt, Wong cut him off. The Kashari have one strategy: overwhelming firepower and heavy armor. They steamroll their enemies because everyone tries to match their strength. We will not make that mistake. Ryan pulled up a holographic display showing the weapon design. These rounds will ignore their shields if our calculations are correct, but they have to be delivered at extremely close range. Whatever ship carries them will be in the middle of enemy fire. Let me worry about that, Wong said. You just make sure they work. Across human space, similar scenes played out. On Earth, recruitment centers were overwhelmed with volunteers. On Titan, factories that produced colony supplies retooled to manufacture military equipment. On Europa, ice miners turned their drilling equipment into improvised weapons platforms. Humanity was mobilizing, and the speed of it shocked even those coordinating the effort. Private Leo Santos stood in formation with 300 other new Marines. He was 19 years old. 6 weeks ago, he had been studying agricultural science at university. Then he saw the Marani testimony broadcast across every screen on Earth. He watched footage of a civilization being systematically destroyed. The next day, he walked into a recruitment center. His sergeant, a career soldier named Rodriguez, paced in front of the formation. You all volunteered. That means you already know what you signed up for. We are going to war against an enemy that has never lost. They are bigger than us, stronger than us, more experienced than us. They expect us to fail. Rodriguez stopped pacing and looked across the assembled Marines. So we will not fight fair. We will not give them the battle they want. We will hit them where they are weak, retreat when they are strong, and make every mistake they make cost them dearly. And when we finally liberate that world, every one of those aquatic people will know that humanity kept its promise. Leo felt something settle in his chest. Fear, yes, but also purpose. He thought about the letter he had sent home to his mother. She had cried when he told her he enlisted. She had also told him she was proud. That had to be enough. Commander Ashley Brooks sat in the cockpit of her fighter, running through pre-flight checks for the 20th time that day. Her squadron, the 7th Strikers, had trained together for years. They were good. She knew they were good. But good enough for this? Her second-in-command, Lieutenant Davies, appeared on her communication screen. Commander, the new stealth modifications are complete. We can test them tomorrow. No, Ashley said. We test them today. We have 2 weeks before deployment. I want every system checked and rechecked. You heard about the latest intelligence report? Davies asked. Ashley had. The Kashari reinforcements were moving toward Mirani space. The humans would be outnumbered 3-1. Maybe worse. She kept that thought off her face. We have faced bad odds before, she said, not like this. Then we get creative. Hit and run. Never stay in one place. Make them chase us. We are faster than they are. We use that, she paused. And Davies? Make sure everyone in the squadron writes their letters home, just in case. Davies nodded soberly and cut the connection. Ashley leaned back in her seat and closed her eyes. She had already written hers. 3 pages to her parents. 1 page to her younger brother. She told them she loved them. She told them why she was doing this. She did not tell them she was afraid. In the command center of Geneva Station, General Volkov reviewed the battle plans with her senior staff. Holographic displays showed the Mirani system in detail, every Kashari position marked, every defensive station highlighted, every patrol route mapped. The initial raids will target their supply lines, she explained, manipulating the display. Fuel depots, communication relays, supply stations. We cut them off from reinforcements and make them work with what they have in system. They will respond by consolidating their forces, her tactical officer said. Exactly. When they pull back to defend key positions, we hit the ones they abandoned. Keep them off balance. Never let them establish a defensive line. And when their reinforcements arrive, we spring the real trap. The fleet is ready? Another officer asked. 300 ships and counting, Volkov said. More than we have ever assembled. Still not enough for a direct confrontation, so we do not give them one. She pulled up casualty projections. The numbers were grim. Thousands dead in the best-case scenario. Tens of thousands in the worst case. Volkov had signed orders that would send people to their deaths before. This was different. This was war on a scale humanity had never experienced. We have 2 weeks, she said. 2 weeks to prepare for something we have never done before. Make them count. Luna Medical Station had been converted into a training facility. Human medics learned Mirani physiology while Mirani survivors taught them everything they knew about Kashari occupation tactics. It was an exchange born of desperation and hope. Dr. Liu moved between rooms, coordinating efforts. The young Mirani girl he had treated was recovering. She watched human medics work with wide eyes, no longer afraid. That alone felt like a victory. Lyra found him in the break room, staring at a screen showing fleet readiness reports. You do not have to do this, she said quietly. Your people. They are sacrificing so much. Liu looked at her. Yes, we are. But the alternative is living in a galaxy where this kind of thing happens and everyone just looks away. We decided we do not want that galaxy. Many of your people will die. Yes, Liu agreed. His voice was heavy. And we will mourn them. And we will remember why they died. And hopefully we will make their sacrifice matter. Lyra was silent for a moment. I have spent my life studying other civilizations. Their histories, their cultures, their philosophies. I thought I understood what motivated different species. But I do not understand you. Humans, you are so young, so new to the galaxy, yet you do things ancient civilizations will not even consider. Maybe that is exactly why, Liu said. We are too young to know better. Too foolish to understand that we should be afraid. Or maybe we just remember what it feels like to be helpless and alone. Across 300 ships, crews ran drills. In 1,000 factories, weapons rolled off production lines. In 10,000 homes, families said goodbye to loved ones heading to war. Humanity moved with singular purpose, and the speed of it caught the attention of the entire galaxy. Other species watched with confusion, some with concern, a few with something approaching hope. For the first time in the Kashari century of expansion, someone was preparing to hit back. Admiral Wong stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Retribution. The name had been chosen deliberately. She watched ships move into formation through the viewport, each one representing thousands of hours of work and hundreds of lives committed to this cause. Her communication officer approached. "Admiral, we are receiving messages from other species. Some are offering support. Supplies, intelligence, even a few volunteers." Wong nodded. "Accept what helps. Record everything. When this is over, the galaxy will need to remember who stood up and who looked away." She pulled up the mission timeline. 2 more days until they jumped to hyperspace. 2 more days until humanity committed itself fully to this course. There would be no turning back after that point. Wong thought about the Marani refugees, about the child who had asked if humans would hurt her, about the promise Dr. Liu had made. She thought about all the promises humanity was making, some spoken and some not. They would keep those promises, or they would die trying. The fleet assembled. 300 vessels of various sizes and purposes, carriers and destroyers, frigates and support ships, medical vessels and supply transports, each one crewed by people who had volunteered to face an enemy that had never been beaten. Ryan Park watched them from his station, seeing his weapons being loaded into fighters and destroyers. Commander Brooks ran her squadron through final drills, pushing them to the edge of their limits. Private Santos practiced combat maneuvers until his muscles burned, trying to prepare for something he could not imagine. General Volkov refined her strategies, searching for any advantage. Dr. Liu trained his medical teams for the casualties that would inevitably come, and Lyra stood at an observation window, watching humanity prepare for war on her behalf. She felt the weight of that responsibility. 4,000 Marani survivors, 300 human ships, thousands of human lives about to be risked for people they had never met. She pressed her hand against the cold glass and whispered a prayer. Not to the old ocean gods this time, to whatever force guided the universe. She prayed that when this was over, when the counting of the dead was done, the cost would not break the species that had been willing to pay it. The clock counted down. 2 days, then 1, then hours. Then Admiral Wong gave the order, and 300 ships jumped to hyperspace, carrying humanity's fury toward a war they might not survive but could not avoid. The galaxy held its breath and watched. Darkness was all they had asked for, and darkness was what space provided. Commander Brooks cut her fighter's engines completely, letting momentum carry her squadron forward in absolute silence. No active sensors, no communications, nothing that would give them away. 8 light-years from the Marani homeworld, she and her pilots drifted like ghosts toward their first target. Through her cockpit window, she could see the Kashari supply depot hanging in orbit around a dead moon. Lights blazed from its docking arms where cargo ships unloaded weapons and supplies for the occupation force. The station was massive, built to supply an army. Guards patrolled lazily. Why would they be alert? No one had dared attack the Kashari in decades. That was about to change. Brooks checked her tactical display. Her squadron was in position. On the other side of the depot, Captain Reed's destroyer group waited. Further out, more human ships held station, ready to execute simultaneous strikes across the system. This was not invasion. This was a statement written in fire and metal. She activated her communication system. Tight beam only. Impossible to intercept. All units. Weapons free. Make the first shot count. Her finger pressed the firing stud. Kinetic penetrator rounds launched from her fighter at a significant fraction of light speed. Around her, 7 other pilots did the same. 16 rounds total, all converging on the depot's reactor core. The Kashari never saw them coming. One moment the depot was operational. The next, it exploded from within. The fusion reactor went critical, and the entire station tore itself apart in a sphere of expanding plasma. 600 Kashari died before they even knew they were under attack. Brooks felt no satisfaction, only grim determination. She fired her engines and led her squadron away at maximum acceleration. Behind them, debris scattered across the void, and humanity's war had begun. Warlord Dravik received the report in his command center on the surface of the Marani homeworld. His translator struggled to process his rage, reducing it to cold words that failed to capture his fury. A supply depot destroyed. Just gone, no warning. No trace of the attackers except for radiation signatures that matched human weapons. Find them, he ordered his subordinates. Send out patrol fleets. Scour every sector. These humans dare to strike at us? Show them what happens to those who provoke the Kashari. His officers scrambled to obey. Fleet elements that had been spread across the system consolidated and moved out to hunt the attackers. Dravik watched the tactical displays with satisfaction. The humans had landed one lucky blow. Now he would crush them. He did not realize he was doing exactly what Admiral Wong wanted. Over the next 72 hours, human forces conducted raids across the Marani system. They hit communication relays, destroying the Kashari's ability to coordinate. They struck fuel depots, limiting the range of patrol ships. They attacked garrison outposts on asteroids and moons, forcing the Kashari to spread their defenses even thinner. Every raid followed the same pattern. Strike hard, strike fast. Disappear before the enemy could respond. The Kashari sent hunting fleets after each attack, but by the time they arrived, the human ships were gone. It was like fighting shadows. Captain Reed's destroyer group found a Kashari cruiser patrolling alone near the outer system. The cruiser was powerful, twice the size of Reed's largest ship and armed with weapons that could vaporize them in seconds. But it was alone, and Reed had learned that numbers mattered more than size when you fought smart. All ships, Delta formation. Use the asteroid field for cover, Reed ordered. His 3 destroyers split up, weaving between massive space rocks that had been orbiting this system for billions of years. The Kashari cruiser detected them and gave chase, confident in its superior armor and weapons. It fired, and one of Reed's destroyers took a glancing hit that vaporized half its port side. 18 crew members died instantly. Reed felt rage building but channeled it into focus. Now, he said quietly, his ships had led the cruiser into a trap. They emerged from behind asteroids on 3 sides, firing in perfect coordination. The first barrage disabled the cruiser's engines. The second destroyed its weapons. The third breached its hull. The cruiser drifted, helpless and dying. Reed allowed himself one moment of satisfaction before ordering his damaged destroyer to fall back. They had won, but at a cost. Those 18 crew members had families, had dreams. Now they were gone. The first human casualties of this war, but certainly not the last. Private Santos experienced combat for the first time when his unit boarded a Kashari garrison station built into a captured asteroid. The station housed 200 Kashari soldiers and served as a forward command post. Admiral Wong wanted it taken out. The Marines breached through an airlock using cutting charges. Alarms screamed immediately. Kashari soldiers responded with brutal efficiency, and the station's corridors became a killing ground. Santos pressed himself against a wall as enemy fire chewed through the metal beside his head. His Sergeant Rodriguez grabbed him and pulled him around a corner. Move or die, Santos. Choose now. Training took over. Santos brought his rifle up and returned fire. A Kashari soldier charged them, massive and armored, looking like something from a nightmare. Santos's first shots bounced off the armor. He adjusted, aimed for the joints like they taught him, and the soldier went down. They fought room by room. It was brutal, close-quarters combat where every corner could hide an enemy. Santos watched his friends die. He watched Rodriguez take a round through the shoulder and keep fighting. He killed things that looked nothing like humans and tried not to think about whether they had families too. When the station finally fell, Santos sat in a corridor surrounded by bodies from both sides. His hands shook. His armor was covered in blood, some of it his from a wound he could not remember receiving. Rodriguez found him there. First time is always the hardest, the sergeant said, grimacing as a medic worked on his shoulder. Does it get easier? Santos asked. No, you just get better at dealing with it. Rodriguez looked around at the carnage. They were soldiers. They chose this life. Remember that, and remember what they were doing here. The station's computer core provided intelligence that human analysts tore through with desperate speed. Tactical data, supply routes, communication protocols. Every piece of information was a weapon they could use. They also found records, logs of executions, lists of Marani killed for refusing to work, images that made hardened intelligence officers look away. Santos saw some of those images when his unit was debriefed. He stopped feeling bad about the Kashari soldiers he had killed. The raids continued. Human forces remained elusive, striking from unexpected angles and vanishing before reinforcements could arrive. Warlord Dravik pulled his scattered patrol fleets back, consolidating them around key positions. Better to defend what mattered than chase ghosts across the system. Admiral Wong watched the tactical display from the bridge of the Retribution and allowed herself a small smile. Dravik was adapting, but too slowly. Every move he made was a reaction, not a strategy. He was playing her game now. "Status report," she ordered. Her tactical officer provided the summary. "We have destroyed or damaged 37 Kashari installations. Enemy patrol strength reduced by approximately 40%. Our casualties stand at 112 killed, 318 wounded. We have lost 6 ships." Wong absorbed the numbers. Each death weighed on her, but they were achieving their objectives. The Kashari occupation force was weakened, scattered, and increasingly paranoid. More importantly, they had stopped thinking of humans as a minor nuisance and started treating them as a real threat. "Time to escalate," Wong said. "Prepare for Operation Thunderstrike. We are going after their forward operating base." The forward base was the nerve center of the Kashari occupation. Destroying it would cripple their ability to control the system and send a message that nowhere was safe. It was also heavily defended with orbital weapons platforms and a permanent garrison of over 3,000 soldiers. Human forces assembled for the assault. This would not be a hit-and-run raid. This would be a direct assault, and casualties would be significant. Wong briefed her commanders personally. "We are past the point of surgical strikes. The Kashari need to understand that we are not raiders. We are liberators. We take this base and we announce to everyone watching that humanity is here to stay." The attack came from 4 directions at once. Commander Brooks led fighter squadrons against the orbital platforms, while Captain Reed's destroyers hammered the base's shields. Marine assault ships, Santos and thousands like him packed inside, waited for the shields to fall. The Kashari fought back with everything they had. 2 human destroyers were destroyed outright. A carrier took critical damage. The orbital platforms fired until human missiles silenced them one by one. The base's shields flickered under sustained bombardment, wavered, and finally collapsed. "Marines, go," Rodriguez shouted. Assault ships dove toward the base, taking fire the entire way. Santos held his rifle tight and tried not to think about all the ways he could die in the next few minutes. The ship shook from impacts. Then they were through the base's outer hull and the boarding ramps dropped. Santos ran forward with his unit into hell. The Kashari were waiting. The fighting was worse than the garrison station. More intense, more desperate. Both sides knew this mattered. Every meter was contested. Every room was paid for in blood, but the humans kept coming. Wave after wave of Marines poured into the base. For every soldier who fell, 2 more pushed forward. The Kashari fought with savage determination, but they were defending while the humans were attacking with the fury of those who had seen what these creatures did to innocent people. Room by room, level by level, the base fell. Santos found himself at the core reactor, placing charges alongside other Marines. They set the timers and evacuated, fighting their way back through corridors now choked with smoke and bodies. The base exploded 30 minutes later, a miniature sun blooming in the darkness. Santos watched from the window of his evacuation ship, exhausted and wounded but alive. They had done it. The Kashari forward base was gone. But looking at the debris field, at the human ship's trailing atmosphere and limping away damaged, Santos understood the real cost. This was victory, but it tasted like ashes. So many had died to achieve it. On the surface of the Marani homeworld, Warlord Dravik watched his forward base's destruction and finally understood. These humans were not raiders. They were not thieves or pirates. They were warriors, and they had come for blood. He sent an urgent message to Kashari High Command. He needed reinforcements. He needed a full battle fleet. Because the humans were not going to stop, and he could not defeat them alone. In deep space, Kashari leadership received the message. They dispatched Admiral Krovak the Undefeated with 200 warships. The message was clear. The humans wanted war. They would get war. Space tore open at the edge of the Marani system and hell poured through. Admiral Krovak the Undefeated brought 200 warships with him. their hulls painted with the symbols of victories over a dozen civilizations. The Kashari reinforcement fleet moved into the system with perfect discipline, weapons charged and shields at maximum. They had come to crush the humans and remind the galaxy why no one challenged the Dominion. Krovac stood in his command center, studying tactical displays with cold calculation. He had fought 7 major campaigns and never lost a single battle. The humans had embarrassed Warlord Dravik with their raids and tricks, but Krovac would not make the same mistakes. He would force them into a direct confrontation where Kashari superiority and firepower would decide the outcome. "Scan the system," he ordered. "Find the human fleet and prepare for engagement." His tactical officers worked their stations. Reports came in quickly. The human fleet was detected, spread across the system in small groups just as intelligence suggested. Approximately 300 ships, most smaller than Kashari vessels. Krovac felt contempt. These primitives thought numbers could compensate for inferior technology. "All ships advance toward the homeworld," Krovac commanded. "We will force them to defend the planet or abandon their mission. Either way, we will destroy them." The Kashari fleet moved forward in formation, a wall of firepower that had broken every enemy it faced. Krovac expected the humans to either flee or prepare defensive positions. He did not expect what actually happened. The system erupted around them. Automated mines that had been drifting cold and undetectable for weeks suddenly activated. Hundreds of them detonated throughout the Kashari formation. Shields absorbed most of the damage, but the explosions disrupted their perfect formations and scattered their advance. Before Krovac could respond, long-range missiles streaked in from multiple directions. They came from platforms hidden in asteroid fields, from stealth ships that had been waiting silent in the dark, from angles the Kashari fleet could not cover simultaneously. The missile barrage was massive, overwhelming point defense systems. "Return fire," Krovac ordered. "Target those platforms!" The Kashari fleet began shooting, but the human forces did not stay still. They were already moving, repositioning, attacking from new angles. This was not the defensive battle Krovac had expected. This was chaos. Commander Brooks led her fighter squadron through the confusion, targeting Kashari capital ships. They did not engage directly, but instead fired at engines and weapon systems, crippling rather than destroying. Every disabled ship was one less threat, and it took other ships out of the fight to protect their damaged vessels. "Keep moving," she shouted to her pilots. "Do not give them a stable target." Kashari fighters launched to intercept them, and the space between fleets became a whirling nightmare of ships and weapons fire. Brooks lost 2 pilots in the first 30 seconds. She pushed the grief down and focused. Mourn later. Survive now. Captain Reed's destroyer group came in from the Kashari fleet's left flank, firing their penetrator rounds at close range. The rounds punched through shields as designed, and 2 Kashari cruisers took critical damage, but the counterattack was brutal. Reed watched in horror as one of his destroyers was cut in half by concentrated fire, both sections spinning away, trailing bodies and debris. All ships, evasive maneuvers. "Do not let them focus fire!" The battle became a brutal melee. The Kashari tried to maintain formation and use their superior firepower, but the humans refused to cooperate. They attacked in small groups, struck vulnerable points, and retreated before the Kashari could concentrate their forces. It was not honorable. It was not fair. It was effective. Admiral Wong watched from the retribution, tracking dozens of separate engagements simultaneously. Her plan was working, but the cost was mounting. She had lost 18 ships already, and the main phase of the battle had not even begun. "Admiral, the Kashari fleet is pushing toward the homeworld," her tactical officer reported. "They are trying to force us into a defensive position." "Let them come," Wong said. "All ships in the outer system begin Phase 2. It is time to spring the trap." Krovac thought he had finally forced the humans into the confrontation he wanted. His fleet approached the Marani homeworld, and the human forces near the planet prepared to defend it. This was where his superior firepower would decide the battle. He ordered his entire fleet to commit to the attack. That was when human ships that had been hiding in the outer system, powered down and invisible to sensors, suddenly activated. They jumped in behind the Kashari fleet, cutting off their retreat. Krovac realized with cold fury that he had been manipulated. The humans had not been scattered randomly. They had been positioned to create exactly this situation. The Kashari fleet was caught between 2 human forces. Krovac made a split-second decision. All ships break through toward the planet. We will crush the force defending it, then turn to deal with the others. The Kashari fleet surged forward with desperate ferocity. The human forces near the planet braced for impact. This was it, the moment that would decide everything. Captain Reed's remaining destroyers held position directly in the path of the Kashari advance. They were outnumbered 5-1, outgunned, outmatched, but they did not retreat. All power to forward shields, Reed ordered. His crew responded without hesitation. We hold this line. For the Mirani. For humanity. We hold. The Kashari hit them like a hammer. Reed's ship shook from impacts, systems failing, hull breaches spreading. But they fired back with everything they had. Around them, other human ships fought with the same desperate determination. They could not win this slugging match, but they did not have to. They just had to hold long enough. Commander Brooks saw the capital ships fighting below and made her decision. All fighters target run on the Kashari flagship. We are going to end this. Her squadron was down to 14 ships. Nowhere near enough for what she was planning. But if they could take out Krovac, the Kashari fleet might falter. It was a suicide run. They all knew it. Brooks to all pilots. It has been an honor flying with you. Let us make this count. They dove toward Krovac's massive flagship, flying through a storm of defensive fire. Ships exploded around Brooks. Her wingman died, then her second in command. But she kept going. Her fighter shaking from impacts, alarms, screaming warnings she ignored. She broke through the defensive screen with 4 other fighters. 5 ships against a capital vessel. It should have been impossible. But they were not aiming to destroy it. Just to cripple it. Fire everything, Brooks shouted. All 5 fighters unleashed their full payload of penetrator rounds directly into the flagship's command section. The rounds tore through armor and shield generators, punching deep into the ship's core systems. The flagship did not explode, but it went dark. Systems failing, command structure destroyed. Brooks pulled up hard, her fighter barely responding. She had made it through. 2 other pilots had as well. The rest were gone. On the crippled flagship, Krovac struggled to understand what had happened. His command center was shattered, his communications dead, his tactical displays dark. He tried to issue orders but had no way to transmit them. Around him, his fleet began to falter. Without their admiral's coordination, Kashari ships fought independently. The formation that was their strength broke apart. Human forces exploited every opening, every moment of confusion. The tide of battle shifted. Admiral Wong saw the change. All ships, full assault. Drive them back. The human fleet pressed their advantage. They were still outnumbered, but the Kashari were leaderless and disorganized. Ships began to break away, attempting to escape the trap. Some surrendered. Others fought to the death. The battle that was supposed to demonstrate Kashari superiority became a rout. On the surface of the Mirani homeworld, Private Santos and his Marines prepared for their assault on the main garrison fortress. They watched the orbital battle through their dropship's windows, seeing ships die on both sides. Then the order came. The orbital bombardment had cleared their landing zone. They were going in. The drop was terrifying. The ship shook from atmospheric entry and ground fire. Santos gripped his rifle and prayed to gods he was not sure he believed in. The ship hit hard. Ramps dropped and Marines poured out into a war zone. The Kashari garrison troops were trapped. Their reinforcements were being destroyed in orbit. Their supply lines were cut. But they fought with savage determination, defending every meter of ground. Santos fought through ruined Mirani cities, past buildings marked with scorch marks from when the Kashari first invaded. His unit pushed toward the fortress, taking casualties with every block. Rodriguez was hit again, and this time he went down. Medics dragged him away while Santos and the others kept advancing. They reached the fortress walls. Human combat engineers blew breaches in the fortifications. Marines poured through. The fighting inside was brutal and close, room by room, hand to hand. Santos killed until his rifle ran dry, then used his sidearm, then found a piece of debris and kept fighting because stopping meant dying. When the fortress finally fell, Santos collapsed against a wall, exhausted beyond anything he had imagined possible. Around him, Marines did the same. They had won. The main garrison was destroyed, but looking at the bodies of his friends scattered through the fortress, Santos could not feel victory. Just overwhelming tiredness. In orbit, the Kashari fleet was broken. Survivors fled the system. Admiral Wong did not pursue. Her fleet had achieved its objective, but at terrible cost. 57 ships destroyed, over 4,000 personnel killed, twice that wounded. The Retribution itself was heavily damaged, fire still being contained on 3 decks, but the Marani homeworld was free. Lyra stood on what remained of her world's surface, watching human ships in orbit above. She had dreamed of this moment for months: liberation, freedom, victory. But standing in the ruins of her capital city, surrounded by destruction, she felt only grief for everything lost and gratitude for those who had made this possible. A human marine approached, covered in dirt and blood. He removed his helmet, revealing a young face aged by combat. "Ma'am, the garrison has fallen. You are free." Lyra looked at this human soldier who had fought for her people, who had bled for strangers. "Who are you?" she asked. "Private Leo Santos," he said. "We are here to help." Lyra began to cry. Santos stood awkwardly, not sure what to do. Finally, he just stayed there beside her, a silent presence in the ruins. Around them, human and Marani worked together to help survivors, to treat wounded, to begin the impossible task of rebuilding. The Battle of Marani was over. The war had been won. But looking at the cost on both sides, everyone understood that victory and triumph were not the same thing. Dawn broke over the Marani homeworld for the first time in 3 months without enemy warships blocking the sun. Lyra stood at the edge of what had been her city's central plaza and watched light spread across ruins that would take decades to rebuild. Human engineers worked alongside Marani survivors, clearing debris and establishing temporary shelters. Medical ships in orbit provided supplies and personnel. The occupation was over, but the scars would remain forever. A human medic moved through the plaza distributing food and water. Lyra watched him stop to treat a Marani child's injured arm, his hands gentle despite his own visible exhaustion. He spoke softly to the child even though neither understood the other's language. The child stopped crying. Small kindnesses in a world that had forgotten kindness existed. Dr. Liu found Lyra there an hour later. He looked 20 years older than when she first met him. The battle had created thousands of casualties, both human and Marani. He had been working in surgical tents for 36 hours straight. "We are setting up permanent medical facilities," he told her. "Your people will have proper care. Not just emergency treatment. Actual hospitals." "Why?" Lyra asked. The question had been building in her for weeks. "Why do all of this?" "You freed us. You could leave now. Let us rebuild on our own. But you stay, you help. You give us your resources when your own people need them." "Why?" Lo sat down on a piece of broken wall, too tired to stand any longer. "Because finishing the job matters. Liberation is not just about removing the oppressor. It is about making sure the oppressed can actually recover. If we left now, we would just be creating a different kind of suffering." He looked at the ruins around them. "My grandmother told me stories about Earth's history, about times when powerful nations would intervene in conflicts, claim victory, and then abandon the people they said they were helping. She taught me that causing harm through neglect is still causing harm. We will not make that mistake." Across the system, similar scenes played out. Human personnel worked around the clock to restore basic services: water purification systems, power generation, communication networks, things the Kashari had destroyed or disabled to maintain control. It was hard work, unglamorous, and received none of the attention that combat had. But it mattered just as much. Private Santos spent his days helping to dismantle Kashari fortifications. The structures were designed to intimidate, massive and brutal. Tearing them down felt like erasing bad memories. His unit worked alongside Marani civilians who wanted to reclaim their world. Rodriguez, his sergeant, was recovering from his wounds at a field hospital. Santos visited when he could, bringing whatever small luxuries he could scavenge. During one visit, Rodriguez asked him, "How are you holding up?" Santos thought about the question, about the friends he had lost, about the Kashari soldiers he had killed, about the nightmares that came every time he closed his eyes. "I do not know," he admitted. "Some days I am okay, some days I am not. That is normal," Rodriguez said. This was not some simulation or training exercise. You saw real combat, lost real people. That does not go away just because we won. Was it worth it? Santos asked. Rodriguez looked out the hospital tent entrance at Marani families moving through the camp, refugees beginning to believe they might have a future again. Ask me in 20 years. But right now, looking at them, I think maybe it was. Commander Brooks attended memorial services for the pilots she had lost. She stood in uniform with the other survivors of her squadron, watching as names were read aloud. 17 pilots gone, 17 families shattered. She had written letters to each one, trying to explain how their loved ones had died with honor and courage. The words felt inadequate. After the service, a mother approached her. Her son had been Brooks's wingman, the first pilot lost in the attack on Krovak's flagship. The woman looked at Brooks with red eyes. "Did it matter?" she asked. "Please, I need to know if my son's death mattered." Brooks met her eyes directly. She owed this woman truth, not comfort. "Your son flew into enemy fire knowing he probably would not come back. He did it anyway because crippling that flagship was the only way to break their command structure. Because of him, because of what he and the others did, thousands of people are alive today who would be dead. That does not make your pain less real. But he saved lives. He made a difference." The woman nodded slowly, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you for telling me." Brooks watched her walk away and felt the weight of command pressing down. She had ordered that attack. She had sent those pilots to their deaths. It had been necessary. It had been the right tactical choice. But necessary and right did not make it easy to live with. Admiral Wong submitted her final after-action report to Earth's military council. The numbers were precise and brutal. 57 ships destroyed, 4,132 personnel killed, 8,614 wounded. Casualty rates exceeded even the worst projections, but the mission had succeeded. The Marani homeworld was liberated, the Kashari occupation force was destroyed, and the galaxy had witnessed something unprecedented, a major Kashari defeat. General Volkov read the report and closed her eyes. Each number represented a person, someone's child or parent or friend, someone who had volunteered to fight for strangers. The cost of victory was paid in the currency of grief. "What happens now?" she asked Wong. "We help them rebuild. We make sure this meant something," Wong replied. She pulled up intelligence reports. "The Kashari Dominion is fracturing. 3 subjugated species have launched rebellions in the last week. Others are preparing to rise up. The Empire is discovering that invincibility was an illusion. And us? We become what we declared ourselves to be. Defenders, protectors, the ones who answer when others cry for help." Wong paused. "Whether we wanted that responsibility or not, we have it now." 2 weeks after the battle, Chancellor Hayes addressed Earth and broadcast the message to the galaxy. He stood in the council chambers where the decision to go to war had been made, his face showing the strain of the past months. Humanity went to war not for conquest or glory, but because people needed help and we chose to provide it. We did not seek this role. We did not want the casualties we suffered. But when the Marani came to us, desperate and alone, we made a choice. We decided that some things matter more than safety, that some evils demand response. He paused, letting his words carry across light years to every civilization listening. "This is our message to the galaxy. Humanity will stand against tyranny. We will defend those who cannot defend themselves. We are not perfect. We make mistakes. We have our own dark history, but we will not stand idle while innocents suffer." Hayes's voice hardened. "To any empire built on the suffering of others, to any civilization that believes might makes right, know this. We are watching. We remember what you do, and if you make us respond, we will not come alone, because we have learned that standing up to evil inspires others to do the same." The message ended. Across the galaxy, reactions varied. Some civilizations applauded. Some condemned humanity for warmongering. Many simply watched and wondered what this meant for the established order. The galaxy was changing and humans had been the catalyst. 6 months passed. The Marani homeworld's oceans began to recover, carefully monitored by human and Marani scientists working together. The Kashari garrison structures were fully dismantled, their materials recycled into housing for refugees. Slowly, carefully, life returned to a world that had been dying. A joint human-Marani space station was completed in orbit, a symbol of partnership and mutual defense. Other species approached Earth seeking alliances. Some offered trade agreements. Some shared technology. Some simply wanted to know that if they needed help, someone would answer. Lyra stood in the observation deck of the completed station, looking down at her healing world. Admiral Wong joined her presence quiet but solid. "My people have a saying," Lyra said. "The deepest currents are the strongest. It means that true power is not always visible on the surface. I think humanity is like that, Wong nodded. We are not the strongest species, not the oldest, not the wisest, but we remember what it means to need help and not receive it. We promised ourselves we would be different. You paid a terrible price for that promise. Yes, we did. Wong's voice was heavy. Every name on that casualty list weighs on me. I gave orders that sent people to their deaths. I will carry that for the rest of my life. But you would do it again, without hesitation, because the alternative is a galaxy where the strong prey on the weak and no one intervenes. We decided we do not want that galaxy. Below them, Marani swimmers ventured into the recovering oceans. Children played in waters that had been poisoned months ago. Families returned to rebuilt cities. Life continued, precious and fragile and worth fighting for. Private Santos, promoted to corporal after the battle, worked on the station as part of the permanent garrison. He wrote letters home regularly now, trying to help his family understand what he had experienced. Some things could not be explained, only lived through, but he tried. He stood at the same observation window where Lyra and Wong had been, watching the planet below. A Marani child, the same one he had met in the fortress ruins, approached him. Her injuries had healed, leaving only faint scars. She held something in her webbed hands. Through a translator, she said, "Thank you for helping us." She gave him a small stone, polished smooth by ocean currents. A gift from a world that had nearly died but survived. Santos accepted it, his throat tight with emotion. "You are welcome," he managed to say. The galaxy learned its lesson slowly, as galaxies do. But the lesson was learned. Humanity was not the most powerful species. They were young, rough around the edges, prone to mistakes. But when someone cried for help, they answered. And when they went to war, they did not go for conquest or glory. They went with fury, with determination, with the absolute certainty that some things were worth fighting for, worth dying for, worth suffering for. The Kashari Dominion would eventually fall, its empire torn apart by rebellions inspired by humanity's example. Other tyrannies would rise and fall. But every time they did, they would have to consider one question. Would this bring the humans? On the Marani homeworld, in rebuilt cities and recovering oceans, a generation grew up knowing that when their people faced extinction, strangers came to help. Not for profit, not for power, but because it was right. That knowledge changed them. It changed humanity too. Both species learned that the bonds forged in shared struggle were stronger than any treaty. That compassion could be a force as powerful as any weapon. That sometimes the right choice is also the hard choice. Admiral Wong retired 2 years later, her duty done. Private Santos returned to Earth but never forgot the world he helped liberate. Dr. Liu continued his work treating the scars of war, both physical and mental. Commander Brooks trained new pilots and taught them that courage means doing what is necessary, even when you are afraid. And Lyra led her people into a new era, one where they were no longer alone, where they had allies who had proven through blood and sacrifice that they would stand with the Marani when it mattered most. The galaxy moved on, as galaxies do. But it moved differently now, because one species had said no to evil loudly enough that others found the courage to do the same. Because humanity had shown that being powerful was not the same as being strong. That true strength was measured not in the enemies you could destroy, but in the innocents you would protect. In the end, that was humanity's legacy. Not conquest, not dominance, but the simple, profound truth that when someone needs help, someone should answer, and humanity would always answer.